I'm Ashley, 29, and this morning I woke up to my car missing from its usual spot. Panic set in until my phone rang. It was Mom casually mentioning they'd given my car to Ryan, my brother. "He needs it more for his new job," she said dismissively. I was speechless. The car I paid for entirely with my own money from countless overtime shifts, the registration in my name, my property. As her words sank in, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Before I dive into this story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. If you've ever had family take advantage of you, hit that subscribe button, trust me, you'll want to see how I fought back. Now, let's get into how my family's betrayal led to one of the hardest decisions of my life. I've always been the one who had to work for everything I own. Nothing was ever handed to me, and honestly, I took pride in that. For 3 years, I picked up every extra shift I could at Memorial Hospital, where I work as a registered nurse. Night shifts, holiday shifts, double shifts, you name it. All so I could save enough to buy my Toyota Camry outright. No loans, no debt. Just pure hard-earned ownership that represented countless missed social events and exhausting work weeks. That car wasn't just transportation, it was my independence, my achievement, my proof that I could make it on my own despite my family's lack of support. The day I drove it off the lot was one of the proudest moments of my life. My brother Ryan, on the other hand, is a completely different story. At 25, he's still the golden child who can do no wrong in our parents' eyes. While I was working through college and nursing school, Ryan dropped out of 3 different programs because they weren't the right fit. When he wrecked his first car, a graduation gift from our parents, they bought him another one without hesitation. When that one got repossessed because he stopped making payments, they paid off his debt. The pattern was clear as day to everyone except them. Growing up, this favoritism was just our normal. If we both asked for something, Ryan got the name brand while I got the generic version. If Ryan wanted to play sports, they'd rearrange the family budget to make it happen. When I wanted to take piano lessons, I was told to save my babysitting money. During holidays, his pile of presents always towered over mine. I'd accepted this reality long ago, but that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. Our parents' house is still filled with Ryan's sports trophies and school participation awards, while my nursing school graduation photos are tucked away in the hallway. My achievements were always expected, his mediocrity was celebrated. Last month, we had a family dinner to celebrate Ryan finally landing a job after being unemployed for nearly a year. Throughout dinner, he complained about his commute to this new warehouse position across town. "The bus schedule sucks, and Uber is getting expensive," he whined between bites of the steak our mother had prepared specially for him. "Ashley, why don't you let your brother borrow your car sometimes?" my mother suggested, as if it was the most reasonable request in the world. Family helps family, after all. I nearly choked on my water. "Mom, I need my car to get to work. I have rotating shifts at the hospital, and public transportation isn't reliable at 3 a.m. "You could always call a cab," my father chimed in, not even looking up from his plate. "Ryan needs to make a good impression at this job." The conversation moved on, but I could feel the tension in the air. I thought I'd made my boundaries clear that evening. Obviously, I was wrong. Yesterday, after a grueling 12-hour shift dealing with a code blue emergency and then staying late to help a short-staffed unit, I came home to my apartment, took a hot shower, and fell into bed without even checking my phone. This morning, I looked out my second-floor window to the assigned spot where my Camry should have been parked. Empty. My first thought was theft. I frantically searched for my keys in my purse, finding them exactly where they should be. Then I noticed the blinking light on my landline. Yes, I still keep a landline for emergencies. The voicemail was from my mother, left at 11:23 p.m. last night. "Ashley, honey, we borrowed your spare key from under your planter. You really should find a better hiding spot and let Ryan take your car. He has an early shift, and his manager is evaluating him for a promotion. Don't worry, he'll take good care of it. Love you." The casualness of her voice made my blood boil. The spare key was for emergencies only, and my parents knew that. They'd taken it upon themselves to decide what happened with my property, without even asking me first. I could feel years of resentment bubbling to the surface as I dialed my mother's number. My hands were shaking as I listened to the phone ring. Mom picked up on the 4th ring, sounding cheerful as if nothing was wrong. "Good morning, sweetie. Did you get my message about the car?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, you can't just take my car without permission and give it to Ryan. That's stealing." Her tone immediately shifted from cheerful to defensive. "Don't be so dramatic, Ashley. It's not stealing when it's family. We're just trying to help your brother get on his feet. You know how important this job is to him. And my job isn't important? I'm a nurse, Mom. People depend on me to show up on time. You've always been so responsible, Ashley. You can figure it out for a few days. Take the bus or call an Uber like everyone else does." I could hear my father in the background asking who was calling. When Mom told him, he got on the phone. "Ashley," his authoritarian tone hadn't changed since I was a child. "This attitude is uncalled for. Your brother finally has a chance to make something of himself, and you're being selfish." "Selfish? It's my car. I paid for it with my money. How am I the selfish one here?" "We raised you better than this," he continued, ignoring my question. "Family comes first, always. Your brother needs this opportunity more than you need your car right now. I'm 30 minutes away from work by car. By bus, it's nearly 2 hours with transfers. I have 12-hour shifts. Do you even care about that?" "Oh, Ashley," my mother chimed back in. "You've always been so independent. This won't hurt you, but it will really help Ryan. Why can't you see that?" The conversation went around in circles. No matter what I said, they twisted it to make me sound unreasonable. According to them, I was the problem, not their blatant disregard for my boundaries and property. After 15 minutes of this gaslighting, I ended the call and immediately tried calling Ryan. Straight to voicemail, of course. I sent him a text. "Ryan, bring my car back now. Mom and Dad had no right to give you my spare key." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, "Chill out, sis. I need it for work. You can survive without it for a few days. Not everything is about you." I stared at his response in disbelief. Not everything is about you? This wasn't about me, it was about my car that I owned. A follow-up text from him. "Besides, Mom and Dad said it was fine. If you have a problem, take it up with them. I'm at work now, so stop bothering me." I threw my phone onto the couch and let out a scream of frustration. This was the last straw in a lifetime of being treated like my needs didn't matter. I felt completely invalidated, as though my hard work meant nothing to my family. It was like I existed solely to make Ryan's life easier. I called Jessica, my best friend since nursing school, who answered despite the early hour. "They did what?" she exclaimed after I explained the situation. "Ashley, that's literally theft. It doesn't matter if they're your family. You need to report it." "Report my own family to the police?" "I can't do that," I said, though the idea had already crossed my mind. "Why not?" "If a stranger took your car, you'd call the police immediately. Why should your family get away with it just because you're related? They're counting on you rolling over like you always do." Jessica's words stung because they were true. My whole life I'd been conditioned to put Ryan's needs before my own, to be the understanding one, the reasonable one, the one who sacrifices. "What if I cause irreparable damage to our relationship?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Ashley, they're the ones damaging the relationship by taking your property without permission. They're counting on your guilt to protect them from consequences. It's manipulative and wrong." As we talked, I glanced at the clock. My shift started in 3 hours, and without my car, I'd need to leave immediately to make it on time by bus. The unfairness of it all hit me again in a wave. "You know what? You're right," I finally said. "I need to stand up for myself. I'm tired of being the family doormat." After hanging up with Jessica, I sat on my couch, weighing my options. Part of me still hesitated to involve authorities. Years of family conditioning isn't easily broken. But another part, a stronger part that had been silenced for too long, knew this was my moment to finally draw a line. "Enough is enough," I whispered to myself, reaching for my phone again. I spent the next hour researching vehicle ownership laws on my phone while waiting at the bus stop. The title was in my name, the insurance was in my name, I had made every payment. Legally, the car was unquestionably mine, and no one, not even my parents, had the right to take it without my permission. When I arrived at the police station after my shift, my confidence wavered. What kind of daughter reports her own family to the police? The thought made my stomach churn, but I forced myself to push through the glass doors. The officer at the front desk, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked up as I approached. "I need to report my car stolen," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "When was it taken?" she asked, pulling out a form. "Last night. I discovered it missing this morning." "Any signs of forced entry? Broken glass?" I shifted uncomfortably. "No, they had a key." She looked up, her expression changing slightly. "Who had a key?" "My parents. They took my spare key without permission and gave my car to my brother." The officer's pen paused above the form. "So this is a family matter?" "No, it's theft," I insisted, Jessica's words echoing in my mind. "The car is registered in my name. I paid for it. No one had permission to take it." She seemed skeptical, but continued filling out the form. "Do you have proof of ownership?" Fortunately, I'd come prepared. I pulled out my vehicle registration, insurance documents, and purchase agreement, all with my name clearly listed. I also showed her texts from my brother, admitting he had the car and refusing to return it. After reviewing my documents, her demeanor changed. "I understand now. We'll file this as unauthorized use of a vehicle." Since they had access to a key, it's not technically breaking and entering, but it's still illegal to take a vehicle without the owner's permission. As she entered the information into the system, my phone began buzzing incessantly. I glanced down to see multiple missed calls from both parents and several text messages. Word had gotten out. I silenced my phone and focused on completing the police report. Once everything was filed and I had a case number, I stepped outside to face the storm I knew was coming. The moment I turned my phone back on, it rang again. My mother. "How could you?" she screamed before I could even say hello. "The police just called your father. They're looking for Ryan. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I reported my stolen car," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, which is exactly what anyone would do in this situation. "We are your family. You don't call the police on family. What will people think? Maybe they'll think you shouldn't take things that don't belong to you." My father grabbed the phone. "You listen to me, young lady. You call them right now and tell them it was a misunderstanding, or so help me God, you are no longer a part of this family." The threat hung in the air between us. In the past, it would have worked. I would have capitulated immediately, desperate to maintain peace. But something had changed. "No," I said firmly. "I won't do that. What you did was wrong, and if you can't see that, then maybe we need some time apart." I ended the call as he was mid-shout. Immediately, my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages from Ryan calling me every name in the book. Voicemails from aunts and uncles who'd heard a distorted version of events from my parents. Facebook messages from cousins telling me I was heartless for potentially getting my brother arrested. Only one message stood out from my Aunt Margaret, my father's sister. "Ashley, I heard what happened. Don't back down. It's time someone in this family stood up to them. Call me if you need support." That small gesture of alliance meant more than she could know. I hadn't expected anyone in the family to take my side. When I got home that evening, exhausted from both work and emotional turmoil, I found several of my coworkers waiting for me at the bus stop. Word had spread at the hospital about my situation, and they'd organized a temporary carpool system to help me get to and from work until my car was returned. "We nurses have to stick together," said Melissa, my charge nurse, as she drove me home. "What your family did isn't right, and we've got your back." Their support brought tears to my eyes. While my biological family was in uproar over my decision to stand up for myself, my work family was stepping up without hesitation. That night, as I tried to sleep despite the constant pinging of my phone, I wondered if I'd made the right choice. Had I overreacted? Should I have handled it differently? But then I remembered all the times I'd been expected to sacrifice while Ryan was allowed to take. All the times my feelings were dismissed as unimportant. All the times I was told to be the bigger person. No, I decided. This time, I had done exactly what I needed to do. The following morning, I received a call from Officer Ramirez, who had been assigned to my case. "Miss Carter, we've located your vehicle," she informed me. "It was found at the Ridgemont apartment complex, which I understand is where your brother resides." Relief washed over me. "Is it okay? Can I come get it?" "You can, but I should warn you that there appears to be some damage to the driver's side door and front fender." My heart sank. Damage? What kind of damage? "A significant dent and some scraped paint. We've questioned your brother about it, but he claims it was already there." I knew that was a lie. My car had been in perfect condition. I'd been meticulous about maintenance and appearance since the day I bought it. "What happens now?" I asked. "Will my brother be arrested?" There was a slight pause. "Actually, your parents have been in contact with the department. Since this is a first offense and a family matter, and you've recovered your property, the district attorney is unlikely to press charges. However, the damage to your vehicle is a separate civil matter you may want to pursue." I later learned that my father had called in a favor with a golf buddy who happened to be friends with the police chief. While Ryan avoided criminal charges, I at least got my car back, though not in the condition I'd left it. When I arrived at the police station to reclaim my vehicle, I nearly cried at the sight of it. The scratch Ryan had mentioned to the officers was actually a deep gouge along the driver's side door, and the small dent was large enough that the door barely opened. It would cost thousands to repair. My phone rang as I was inspecting the damage. It was my mother. "Are you happy now?" she asked bitterly. "Ryan's manager wrote him up for being late today because he had to deal with the police instead of going to work. He could lose this job because of you." "Mom, he took my car without permission and damaged it. I'm looking at it right now, and it's going to cost at least $3,000 to fix." "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's just a little scratch. Your father says he knows a guy who can buff that out for a couple hundred." "It's not a scratch, Mom. The entire door is damaged." "Fine," she sighed dramatically. "We'll pay to fix it if you drop this whole ridiculous vendetta against your brother." Family doesn't do this to family, Ashley. I was too exhausted to argue about who had wronged whom. Just have Dad send me the information for this repair guy he knows. 3 days later, my father texted me an address for Mike's auto body and added, "He's expecting you Saturday morning. We're paying for this one, but don't expect us to bail you out again if you keep making enemies in your own family." The message stung, but I was more concerned with getting my car fixed. When Saturday arrived, I discovered that Mike's auto body was actually just a guy named Mike who did repairs out of his home garage. He took one look at the damage and shook his head. "This isn't a simple fix, miss. That door's gonna need replacing, and the fender work is complicated. I can do it, but it'll take time and proper parts." When he quoted me a price that was actually fair for the extent of the damage, I called my father to confirm they would cover it. He hemmed and hawed, eventually agreeing but making it clear this was highway robbery and that I was taking advantage of their generosity. 2 weeks later, with my car finally repaired, I received a text from my mother asking no, telling me to come to dinner on Sunday. "We need to put this unpleasantness behind us and be a family again," she wrote, as if her use of the word family was some kind of magic spell that could erase what had happened. Against my better judgment, I agreed to go. When I arrived at my parents' house, I immediately sensed something was off. My brother's car was in the driveway, along with several others I recognized as belonging to my aunts and uncles. My mother greeted me with a too bright smile. "Everyone's here, isn't that nice?" As I stepped into the living room, the conversation died. Aunt Brenda, Uncle Jim, Cousin Stephanie, and several other relatives sat in a loose circle. My brother slouched in my father's recliner, smirking slightly. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already knew. "This was an intervention. We're all here because we care about you, Ashley," my mother began, using the exact tone she had used when addressing my teenage cousin's drinking problem last year. "We're worried about the choices you've been making." For the next hour, I endured lectures about family loyalty, forgiveness, and appropriate ways to handle disagreements. Each relative took turns expressing their disappointment in my decision to involve the police in a simple misunderstanding. "If you had just talked to us," my father insisted, "we could have worked this out privately." "I did try to talk to you," I reminded him. "You dismissed my concerns and told me to get over it." "That's not how it happened," my mother cut in. "You've always exaggerated when you don't get your way." The gaslighting was so blatant, I almost laughed. Instead, I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment to compose myself. As I passed the kitchen, I overheard my brother's voice. "Don't worry, Dad. I made a copy of the new key when she wasn't looking at Mike's shop." "Good thinking," my father replied. "You never know when we might need to borrow it again. She'll get over it eventually. just like always. I froze, unable to believe what I was hearing. They were already planning to take my car again, even after everything that had happened. The betrayal cut deep, confirming that nothing had changed and nothing would change. As I stood there, my Uncle Robert rounded the corner and saw my face. He'd clearly overheard the conversation too. "Ashley," he said quietly, "I think you should know that not everyone here agrees with how you've been treated." I returned to the living room with Uncle Robert at my side, a new resolve hardening within me. "I appreciate everyone's concern," I announced, interrupting Aunt Brenda's monologue about how I'd always been too sensitive. "But I just overheard my brother and father planning to take my car again." So clearly, nothing has changed. The room fell silent. My mother looked at my father in alarm. Ryan's face flushed red. "You were eavesdropping?" my father accused, trying to shift the focus. "Does it matter?" Uncle Robert interjected, surprising everyone. "Jim, what were you thinking? The girl works hard for what she has. You had no right to take her car the first time, let alone plan to do it again. Stay out of this, Rob," my father warned. "No, I don't think I will," Uncle Robert replied. "Someone needs to point out that the emperor has no clothes. You've favored that boy his entire life. And look what it's gotten him, a 25-year-old man who thinks he's entitled to take whatever he wants without consequences." The room erupted into chaos. Family members taking sides, old grievances surfacing, voices rising. In the midst of it all, I grabbed my purse and quietly slipped out the front door. As I got into my car, making sure to take both keys with me, I could still hear the shouting from inside. I drove away with tears streaming down my face, feeling more alone than I ever had before. I should have known my family wouldn't let things end there. The following week, the retaliation began in earnest. It started with phone calls from extended family members I rarely spoke to, all expressing concern about my mental health. My cousin Brittany called to ask if I was still having those anger issues, something I'd never experienced. My grandmother's sister wondered if I was taking those medications regularly, though I wasn't on any prescription drugs. The pattern became clear when my second cousin Tina, who I hadn't spoken to in years, messaged me on Facebook. "Your mom told everyone at the family reunion that you've been having serious emotional problems since your breakup." What breakup? I hadn't dated anyone in over a year. A quick scroll through my family's social media revealed the narrative they were creating. Vague posts from my mother about supporting loved ones through mental health crises. My brother sharing articles about forgiveness with captions like, "Some people need to learn that family is more important than material possessions." My father rarely posted online, but he'd liked and commented on everything, lending his tacit approval to their smear campaign. Then came the police visit. I was getting ready for my shift when there was a knock at my door. 2 officers stood outside, looking uncomfortable. "We received a report about a potentially suicidal individual at this address," one explained. "Are you Ashley Carter?" Stunned, I nodded. There must be some mistake. I'm not suicidal. They asked to come inside, and for the next 20 minutes I answered their questions and assured them I was in no danger. Before leaving, the female officer pulled me aside. "Miss Carter, these wellness checks are confidential, but I think you should know the call came from a Ryan Carter. Given your recent history with the police department, I thought you should be aware. My brother had filed a false report, wasting police resources and potentially harming someone who might actually need emergency assistance, all to harass me and potentially embarrass me with my neighbors. At work, things weren't much better. My supervisor Amanda called me into her office midway through my shift. 'Ashley, is everything okay? I've noticed you've been distracted lately, and there was a medication error on your floor yesterday. I'm sorry about that, but it wasn't on my patients. I double-checked everything as always. I know, but as charge nurse, you're responsible for oversight.' She hesitated. Also, I've received some concerns from other staff members." "What concerns?" "Brittany in pediatrics mentioned you've been going through some personal issues that might be affecting your work." Brittany, my brother's girlfriend. I hadn't made the connection before. She worked in a completely different department, and I rarely saw her, but apparently, she'd been busy spreading rumors. "Whatever Brittany told you isn't true," I said firmly. "My brother took my car without permission recently, and there's been some family fallout. That's all." Amanda seemed relieved but still concerned. "Just make sure it doesn't affect your work, okay? You're one of our best nurses, and I'd hate to see that change." The next blow came when I discovered my car vandalized in the hospital parking lot. Someone had keyed a long scratch along both sides and flattened my tires. When I asked security about parking lot cameras, I was told they'd been malfunctioning that day. The timing seemed suspiciously convenient. That evening, I found an anonymous note tucked under my apartment door. Family protects family. Back off or worse will happen. The final straw came when I checked my bank account and discovered it was overdrawn by $2,500. Panicked, I called the bank and discovered that a joint account I'd opened with my parents when I was 17 and had forgotten to close had been used to withdraw the money. When confronted, my mother's explanation was infuriating in its casualness. Your father needed to cover some unexpected expenses, and we knew you'd want to help. It's just a loan, Ashley. We'll pay you back when we can. A loan requires permission. This was theft, plain and simple. The combined stress took its toll. I couldn't sleep, jumping at every sound outside my apartment. I lost my appetite and dropped 10 pounds in 2 weeks. At work, I was constantly checking over my shoulder, afraid of what Brittany might be saying or doing to undermine me. Jessica noticed immediately when we met for coffee. You look terrible, she said bluntly. What's going on? I poured out everything: the police visit, the vandalism, the financial theft, the workplace rumors. With each revelation, her expression grew darker. Ashley, this is beyond family drama. This is harassment and criminal behavior. You need to document everything. What's the point? The police already think I'm crying wolf after the car situation, and now Ryan's made me look unstable with that wellness check. The point is creating a paper trail, she insisted, pulling out a notebook from her purse. Write down every incident date, time, what happened, any witnesses. Take photos of the vandalism and the notes. Save texts and voicemails. Print bank statements. If you ever need to get a restraining order or press charges, you'll need evidence. A restraining order against my own family? The idea seemed extreme, yet the relief I felt at the suggestion was telling. They've stolen your car, your money, and now they're trying to steal your reputation and peace of mind, Jessica pointed out. What makes you think they'll stop on their own? As much as I hated to admit it, she was right. If I wanted this to end, I needed to start fighting back, not with their tactics, but with the law on my side. 3 days later, I reached my breaking point. After a particularly grueling shift dealing with a multi-car accident victim, I discovered someone had smashed my recently repaired car window and poured what looked like soda all over the interior. The sticky liquid had seeped into every crevice of the dashboard and upholstery. I stood there staring at the damage, too emotionally drained even to cry. This was the second vandalism incident in less than 2 weeks. The cost of repairs was mounting, my savings were depleted from the stolen loan, and I was exhausted from constant vigilance. Something inside me just broke. I found myself in the supply closet at work, sliding down against the wall as sobs racked my body. That's where Amanda found me 20 minutes later when she came looking for additional IV bags. Ashley? Her voice was gentle as she knelt beside me. What's wrong? I couldn't even form words, just gesturing helplessly as tears continued to stream down my face. Amanda sat with me, waiting patiently until I could speak. My car, again, they won't stop, I managed between sobs. Amanda helped me to her office, closed the door, and listened as I finally told her everything, the whole saga from the initial car theft to the ongoing harassment. When I finished, she looked deeply troubled. You can't continue working like this. I'm putting you on medical leave, effective immediately. But I need the money, I protested, especially now, with all these repair costs. Your health comes first. You're exhibiting clear signs of acute stress, and in our profession, that's dangerous for you and for patients. HR will process this as paid medical leave. I'm making it official. I felt simultaneous relief and panic. Relief at the thought of not having to maintain my professional composure while falling apart inside, but panic at being alone with my thoughts and fears. Being on leave gave my family another weapon. My mother's Facebook post the next day was particularly vicious in its fake concern, praying for my daughter who's taking time off work for mental health reasons. Sometimes, the strongest people face the biggest battles inside their minds. The comments were a mixture of generic well wishes and thinly veiled digs. She was always such a high-strung child, and Some people just can't handle adult responsibilities from relatives who claim to care about me. Meanwhile, Ryan's promotion at his warehouse job became the family's new favorite topic. My parents threw him a celebration dinner, making sure to post dozens of photos tagged with messages about family support and so proud of our son. The subtext was clear: the good child succeeds while the bad one falls apart. My apartment, once my sanctuary, began to feel like a prison. I found myself checking the locks multiple times before bed, jumping at every noise in the hallway, and peering through the peephole before opening the door. I stopped going out except for necessary trips to buy groceries or meet with my doctor, who prescribed anti-anxiety medication to help me cope. One evening, as I was bringing in groceries from my car, now sporting a taped-up window until I could afford to fix it properly, I dropped a bag in the parking lot. Oranges rolled in all directions, and I stared at them, too emotionally exhausted even to care. "Need a hand?" a voice asked. I looked up to see Michael, who lived in the apartment directly across from mine. We'd exchanged polite nods in the past but had never really spoken. "Thanks," I said as he helped gather my scattered produce. "No problem." He hesitated, then added, "Hey, I don't want to overstep, but I've noticed your car's been having some issues lately." I stiffened, wondering if he was judging me for not fixing it promptly. "Yeah, it's been a rough month. Actually, I wanted to let you know that I have a doorbell camera that points toward the parking lot. Last week, I caught footage of someone messing with your car around 2 a.m. My heart raced. "You did? Did you see who it was?" "A guy in his 20s, dark hair, athletic build. He was pretty deliberate about it, brought tools and everything. The description matched Ryan perfectly. Would you be willing to show me the footage?" Michael nodded. That's why I mentioned it. It didn't seem random, looked personal. After bringing my groceries inside, I followed Michael to his apartment, maintaining a cautious distance. Though he seemed genuinely helpful, months of harassment had made me wary of everyone. The footage was crystal clear. There was my brother, methodically breaking my window and pouring what looked like 2-liter bottles of cola throughout my car interior. The calculated malice was chilling. "Do you know him?" Michael asked, watching my face. "He's my brother," I admitted, the words tasting bitter. Michael's eyebrows shot up. "Family dispute?" "You could say that." Seeing my reluctance to elaborate, he didn't press. "I'm happy to send you this footage if it helps. And I know we're just neighbors, but my sister Lauren is an attorney. She specializes in family law and restraining orders. If you need someone to talk to, I could put you in touch." His kindness, coming after weeks of betrayal and isolation, almost broke me again. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Let's just say I recognize the signs of family harassment. My ex-wife went through something similar with her parents." He shrugged. "Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us are the ones who hurt us the most." 2 days later, I found myself sitting across from Lauren in her downtown office. Unlike the dismissive police officers or the judgmental relatives, she listened without interruption as I detailed the escalating pattern of harassment. "This is textbook family abuse," she said when I finished. "Just because they're blood relatives doesn't give them the right to terrorize you." I never thought I'd be discussing family abuse about my own parents. Most people don't. That's why it continues. We're conditioned to protect the family image at all costs. She leaned forward. "But Ashley, what they're doing isn't just morally wrong. Much of it is illegal. Theft, vandalism, false police reports, financial fraud. You have options." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Not just because of the legal avenues Lauren outlined, but because I'd found people who validated my experience instead of dismissing it. Michael became an unexpected source of support, texting me occasional check-ins or dropping off coffee when he knew I had early appointments. We developed a signal system. If my blinds were closed during daytime, it meant I didn't feel safe and he should check on me. He installed an additional security camera focused specifically on my car and door. Through Lauren, I joined a support group for adults dealing with family estrangement. Hearing others share similar experiences helped me realize I wasn't alone or overreacting. Many members had gone through exactly what I was experiencing: the gaslighting, the smear campaigns, the escalating harassment when they established boundaries. The hardest part, said Denise, a 50-year-old woman who hadn't spoken to her mother in 7 years, is mourning the family you wished you had while dealing with the family you actually got. That resonated deeply with me. I wasn't just dealing with car damage or stolen money. I was grieving the loss of what I'd always hoped my family would become. The parents who would love me as unconditionally as they loved Ryan. The brother who would see me as an ally rather than competition or a resource to exploit. With each support group session and each conversation with Michael or Lauren, I felt my perspective shifting. The fog of guilt and obligation began to lift, replaced by clarity and, gradually, determination. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. You know, Michael said one evening as we shared takeout in my apartment, with the door safely locked and blinds open. My sister says the strongest people she knows are the ones who had to build their own families from scratch. As I looked around at the small gathering, Michael, Lauren, who had stopped by to drop off some legal documents, and Jessica, who still checked on me daily, I realized that's exactly what I was doing. Building a family based on mutual respect and genuine care, rather than obligation and DNA. It wasn't the life I had planned, but maybe it could be better than the one I'd been trying to force to work for 29 years. The key to dealing with narcissistic family systems, Lauren explained during our third meeting, is to be strategic, not emotional. They're counting on you to react out of hurt or anger, which they can then use against you. I nodded, taking notes. After weeks of documenting every incident and gathering evidence, I was finally ready to take action not out of revenge, but self-protection. We start with cease and desist letters, Lauren continued, sliding documents across her desk. 1 to your parents, 1 to your brother, and 1 to anyone else directly involved in the harassment, like your brother's girlfriend. The letters were straightforward but firm, detailing the specific actions that needed to stop immediately. Unauthorized access to my financial accounts, defamatory statements on social media, property damage, showing up uninvited at my residence or workplace, and contacting me through third parties. These aren't legally binding, Lauren cautioned, but they establish a paper trail showing you formally requested the behavior to stop. If they continue, it strengthens our case for harassment charges or a restraining order. My hand trembled slightly as I signed each letter. Will this make things worse? Possibly, in the short term. There's often an extinction burst when narcissists realize their usual tactics aren't working. But that's why we're preparing on multiple fronts simultaneously. Those fronts included meeting with a detective to file a formal police report about the car vandalism, providing Michael's security footage as evidence. We froze my credit to prevent further financial exploitation and closed all accounts connected to my family. I changed all my passwords, set up 2-factor authentication, and created new security questions with answers my family couldn't possibly guess. For my apartment, Michael helped install a security camera at my door and a proper deadbolt lock. We changed where I parked my car to a spot visible from both our apartments. I also began recording all phone conversations with family members legal in our state with one-party consent. The cease and desist letters were delivered by courier service on a Tuesday. By Wednesday afternoon, the reactions began pouring in. My brother's response came first, a profanity-laden text message threatening to make me regret involving lawyers. I forwarded it directly to Lauren without responding. My mother called 6 times in succession, leaving increasingly hysterical voicemails about how I was breaking her heart and destroying the family. My father's approach was more direct. A terse email offering a one-time payment of $5,000 to put this nonsense behind us with the condition I sign an agreement, never to speak about family matters to outsiders again. They're trying to buy your silence, Lauren observed when I forwarded her the email. That's actually a good sign, it means they're worried. The most surprising reaction came from Ryan, who showed up at my apartment unannounced, pounding on my door and demanding I speak to him face-to-face like an adult. Thanks to Michael's security camera, I had video evidence of this attempt to intimidate me, which we promptly added to our documentation. When the cease and desist letters failed to stop the harassment, we moved to the next phase, confronting Ryan's girlfriend Brittany about her workplace rumors. With Amanda's support, I requested a formal meeting with hospital administration, providing evidence of targeted harassment, including statements from colleagues who'd been approached with false information about my mental health and work performance. The hospital took workplace harassment seriously. After a brief investigation, Brittany received a formal warning and was transferred to a different shift. It wasn't termination, but it effectively removed her ability to monitor my activities or spread rumors during my shifts. With Lauren's guidance, I also began attending therapy sessions with Dr. Wilson, a psychologist specializing in family trauma. Unlike previous therapists who had encouraged reconciliation at all costs, Dr. Wilson understood the dynamics of narcissistic family systems. There's a pervasive myth in our culture that family relationships must be preserved no matter what, she explained during our second session. But healthy relationships, family or otherwise, require mutual respect, boundaries, and accountability. When those elements are consistently missing, distance might be the healthiest option. Through therapy, I began recognizing patterns I'd normalized my entire life: the scapegoating, the golden child dynamic with Ryan, the conditional love based on compliance, the weaponized guilt. I started to understand that my feelings and boundaries weren't just valid, they were essential to my well-being. Around this time, Lauren introduced me to an online support group specifically for family estrangement. Connecting with others who understood exactly what I was experiencing provided validation I hadn't realized I desperately needed. From them, I learned practical strategies for handling everything from flying monkeys, relatives sent to guilt me into compliance, to holiday grief. 6 weeks after sending the cease and desist letters, we had compiled enough evidence of continued harassment to file for a temporary restraining order against Ryan. The judge granted it based on the security footage of the car vandalism and his intimidating behavior at my apartment. When the sheriff served Ryan with the restraining order, my parents' approach suddenly shifted. Instead of harassment, they attempted reconciliation with conditions, of course. "We're willing to forgive you for all this legal nonsense," my mother said during a phone call I'd intentionally placed on speaker with Lauren present. "Your father and I think you've made your point. Now it's time to drop all this and be a family again." "What does being a family mean to you?" I asked, following the script Lauren and I had prepared. "It means you stop attacking your brother and making these wild accusations. It means you respect our authority as your parents. It means you understand that family comes first before your own selfish desires." Nothing had changed. They still didn't recognize my autonomy or their role in the conflict. They still expected me to sacrifice my well-being for Ryan's convenience. They still saw boundaries as a tax. "I'm not dropping the restraining order," I said calmly. "And if you want any relationship with me moving forward, you need to acknowledge the harm you've caused and make actual changes." "What harm?" my mother scoffed. "We've given you everything. We raised you, we supported you. You stole my car. You took money from my account without permission. You spread lies about my mental health. You enabled Ryan's harassment campaign. That's the harm." The call ended with my mother in tears, and my father threatening to contest this absurd restraining order. But Lauren, who had heard everything, gave me a thumbs up. I had stood my ground without being baited into an emotional reaction. Over the following weeks, I established clear, non-negotiable boundaries for any future contact: acknowledgement of past behavior, respect for my property and finances, no discussion of Ryan, and no unsupervised access to my home or possessions. I sent these in writing, making it clear that these weren't punishments but prerequisites for a healthier relationship. The response was telling. My father didn't respond at all. My mother sent a 10-page handwritten letter that acknowledged nothing while listing all the ways I had supposedly hurt and disappointed them throughout my life. But for the first time, their reaction didn't devastate me. I had expected it, prepared for it, and understood it as a reflection of their limitations, not my worth. "You're developing what we call a Teflon sense of self," Dr. Wilson explained. "Their projections and accusations no longer stick because you know who you are and what you deserve." As my confidence grew, I became more comfortable asserting boundaries in other areas of my life as well. I negotiated better shifts at work, declined social invitations that didn't align with my priorities, and spoke up when friends made assumptions about my availability or resources. Michael noticed the change one evening as we walked our neighborhood. "You seem different lately," he observed. "More present." "I feel different," I admitted. "Like I'm finally living my life instead of just reacting to everyone else's demands and expectations." He smiled. "It suits you." The path forward wasn't perfect or linear. There were still difficult days, moments of doubt, and occasional backsliding into old patterns of guilt and obligation. But with each small victory and each reinforced boundary, I moved further away from the role of family scapegoat and closer to becoming the author of my own story. I had just finished a therapy session with Dr. Wilson when Michael texted, "Parents' car in your parking lot. Arrived 5 minutes ago." My heart raced. In the 3 months since I'd established no contact boundaries with my parents, they had respected them begrudgingly, according to mutual acquaintances, but still. This unexpected appearance felt ominous. "I'm heading home now. Is Ryan with them?" I texted back. "Don't see him, but I'm watching from my window. Thanks, on my way." During the drive home, I mentally rehearsed the scripts Lauren and I had prepared for potential confrontations. Stay calm, speak factually, don't justify, argue, defend, or explain. Set clear consequences for boundary violations. When I pulled into my parking spot, my parents' Lexus was parked directly beside it, a calculated move to ensure I couldn't avoid them. They stepped out as soon as they saw me. My mother wearing the martyred expression she'd perfected over decades, my father's face set in its stern disapproval mode. "Ashley," my mother began, reaching for a hug I deftly sidestepped. "We've given you space, but this has gone on long enough. We need to talk." "I made my boundaries clear in my letter," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Unannounced visits aren't acceptable." "We're your parents," my father interjected. "We don't need an invitation to see our own daughter." "Actually, you do. This is my home, and I get to decide who visits and when." My mother's eyes welled with tears. "Do you hear how cold you sound? This isn't the daughter we raised." "You're right," I agreed. "I've changed. I no longer accept being treated as less valuable than Ryan or having my boundaries ignored." "This isn't about your brother," my father insisted. "This is about your increasingly disrespectful attitude. The restraining order, the legal threats, it's embarrassing the entire family. If you're embarrassed by consequences, you should examine the actions that led to them." We stood in the parking lot, the conversation circling familiar patterns. Every attempt to redirect my focus back to family obligation was met with my calm restatement of boundaries. Their frustration grew visibly with each exchange. I was about to excuse myself when Ryan's truck screeched into the lot, parking haphazardly across 2 spaces. He jumped out, face flushed with anger. "There she is, the family traitor," he spat, advancing toward me. My father placed a restraining hand on his shoulder. "Take it easy, son. We're here to resolve this, not make it worse." "Resolve what?" Ryan demanded. "She got me served with legal papers at work." "Do you know how humiliating that was?" My manager asked questions. "People talk." "You vandalized my car," I reminded him. "Twice. There were consequences." "I barely touched your precious car. You've always been so dramatic." The gaslighting was so blatant that I almost laughed. "There's video evidence, Ryan. The restraining order is valid for another 3 months, which means you're violating it right now by being here." His face contorted with rage. "See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Always hiding behind rules and technicalities instead of being a decent sister." "A decent sister doesn't steal her brother's car," my mother chimed in, her voice sharp with accusation. The absurdity of her statement momentarily stunned me. "I never took Ryan's car, he took mine. That's what started this entire situation." "Because he needed it," she insisted. "And instead of helping your brother, you called the police on your own family." We had circled back to the beginning. Nothing had changed in their perception. I was still wrong for establishing consequences, still selfish for expecting my property to be respected, still the problem for not enabling Ryan's entitlement. I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. Michael had emerged from the building and was walking casually toward us, phone visibly recording in his hand. "Everything okay here, Ashley?" he asked, positioning himself beside me. "Who are you?" my father demanded, straightening to his full height, an intimidation tactic that had worked when I was a child, but seemed almost comical now. "A concerned neighbor," Michael replied evenly. "And I'm recording this conversation because one of the participants is violating a legal restraining order." Ryan took a threatening step forward. "Mind your own business, buddy." "Ashley is my friend, so this is my business," Michael replied without flinching. "And I've already called the non-emergency police line to report the restraining order violation. They should be here shortly." My mother's tears instantly dried up. You're calling the police? On us? Ashley, tell your tall friend to stop this nonsense immediately. I can't do that, Mom. Ryan knows he's not supposed to be within 500 feet of me. Those are the legal consequences of his actions. So this is how it's going to be? My father asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Choosing strangers over your own blood? I'm choosing respect over abuse, I corrected him. And if that means establishing relationships with people who actually care about my well-being, then yes, that's how it's going to be. In the distance, police sirens wailed. Ryan's bravado crumbled instantly. This is ridiculous, he muttered, backing toward his truck. I'm out of here. Ryan, wait, my mother called, but he was already peeling out of the parking lot, leaving our parents to face the approaching police car alone. The officer who responded recognized me from the previous reports. After checking IDs and confirming the restraining order was active, he spoke with my parents privately. I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language shifted from indignant to deflated as he talked. When they approached me afterward, my father's expression was grim. The officer says we need to leave or face trespassing charges. We're going, my mother added quickly. But this conversation isn't over, Ashley. You can't hide behind restraining orders and police forever. I'm not hiding, I replied. I'm standing exactly where I've always been, asking for basic respect. The choice to provide that has always been yours. As they drove away, the adrenaline that had sustained me through the confrontation ebbed, leaving me shaky and exhausted. Michael guided me to a bench near the apartment entrance. You did really well, he said, handing me a bottle of water he'd brought down. Held your ground without escalating. It doesn't feel like I accomplished anything, I admitted. They still don't understand. They probably never will. Maybe not, he agreed. But that's not your responsibility anymore. Your job is to protect your peace, not make them understand why you need it. That evening, I filed for an extended restraining order that included my parents as well as Ryan. Lauren helped me compile evidence of their continued harassment pattern, including Michael's video of the confrontation and the violation of the existing order. 3 days later, the court granted the extended restraining order a bittersweet victory that legally enforced the separation that had already occurred emotionally. It felt both liberating and profoundly sad to acknowledge that legal protection from my own family was necessary for my well-being. But as Dr. Wilson reminded me during our next session, grief and relief often travel together when we set healthy boundaries. You can mourn the family you wished you had while celebrating the freedom to build the life you deserve. And that's exactly what I intended to do. 6 months after the parking lot confrontation, I stood in my kitchen arranging appetizers on a serving tray, the sounds of laughter drifting in from my living room. So much had changed in half a year, most of it for the better. Professionally, I'd returned from medical leave with renewed focus and energy. Amanda had created a leadership position for me, overseeing nursing education for our department. The role came with regular hours, higher pay, and the satisfaction of mentoring newer nurses. My old Camry, with its history of family drama, had been sold to a college student who needed reliable transportation. With my improved financial situation and restored credit, I'd purchased a used Subaru, nothing fancy but mine alone, with no spare keys hidden anywhere. My apartment felt different too. I'd repainted the walls, rearranged furniture, and filled the space with plants and art that brought me joy. It no longer felt like a refuge from family harassment, but a genuine home where I could truly relax. The most significant change, though, was the circle of people gathered in my living room for an early Thanksgiving dinner. Michael was there, of course. Our friendship had evolved into a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine caring. Lauren and her husband chatted with Jessica and her boyfriend near the window. Amanda and her wife helped set the table while Dr. Wilson, who had become a mentor as well as a therapist, shared cooking tips with Michael's parents, who had welcomed me with surprising warmth. This was my chosen family, people who supported my growth rather than punishing it, who respected boundaries instead of viewing them as challenges to overcome, who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. The restraining order against Ryan remained in effect, though he had moved to another state for work according to mutual acquaintances. My parents had made several attempts at reconciliation in the months following the court order, first through angry letters demanding I end this nonsense, then through flying monkeys dispatched to guilt me, and finally through a carefully worded email that almost, but not quite, acknowledged their role in the estrangement. I had responded to that last attempt with clear, non-negotiable conditions for any future relationship: therapy both individual for them and joint sessions for us, formal acknowledgement of past behaviors, respect for my autonomy and boundaries, and no contact with Ryan during our rebuilding period. They hadn't responded, which was an answer in itself. The extended family had largely followed my parents' lead in shunning me, with a few notable exceptions. Uncle Robert called monthly to check in. My cousin Melissa sent supportive texts. And most surprisingly, my 17-year-old cousin Zoe had reached out through Instagram with a message that brought tears to my eyes. "I know everyone's talking about you behind your back, but I think what you did was brave. They treat me the same way they treated you. And watching you stand up for yourself gave me hope that I don't have to accept it forever. Thank you." That message reminded me that ripple effects of our actions extend further than we realize. My boundaries weren't just protecting me, they were modeling possibilities for others trapped in similar dynamics. At work, I'd found myself becoming an unofficial resource for colleagues experiencing family difficulties. After helping a young nurse navigate her controlling parents' opposition to her career choices, I'd started a small support group that met monthly in the hospital cafeteria after shifts. Therapy continued to be essential, though the frequency had decreased as my coping skills improved. Dr. Wilson had helped me recognize the generational patterns in my family, how my father's authoritarian approach mirrored his own father's, how my mother's enabling behavior stemmed from her childhood experiences of emotional neglect. Understanding these patterns didn't excuse their behavior, but it helped me depersonalize it. Their treatment of me reflected their limitations, not my value. This realization was perhaps the most healing of all the knowledge that I hadn't been a bad daughter. I'd been an inconvenient truth teller in a system built on denial and favoritism. There were still difficult moments, of course. Birthdays and holidays brought waves of grief for the family relationships I'd wished for. Social media posts of family gatherings I wasn't invited to could still sting. And occasionally, I'd catch myself slipping into old thought patterns, questioning whether I'd overreacted or been too harsh. But those moments grew less frequent and less intense with time. The more I surrounded myself with healthy relationships, the clearer the contrast became between what I'd accepted and what I deserved. "Dinner's ready," I announced, carrying the final dish to the table. As everyone gathered around, Michael raised his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast to Ashley, who has taught me more about courage in the past year than I learned in the previous 30. "To Ashley," the others echoed, raising their glasses. Embarrassed but touched, I smiled. "I'm just grateful for all of you. This time last year, I couldn't have imagined being here, feeling this peaceful. That peace was always yours to claim," Dr. Wilson observed. "You just had to believe you deserved it." As conversation and laughter flowed around the table, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. It hadn't begun with the car theft that was merely the breaking point after years of accumulated disrespect and boundary violations. The real journey had been internal. From doubting my worth to defending it, from seeking approval to establishing standards, from accepting crumbs of conditional love to building relationships based on mutual respect. The irony wasn't lost on me that losing my car had ultimately led to finding myself. By taking my property, my family had inadvertently forced me to recognize how much else I'd allowed them to take over the years: my confidence, my peace of mind, my right to equal treatment and basic respect. In standing up to them, I'd reclaimed not just my car but my voice, my boundaries, and most importantly, my future free from the limitations they'd placed on me and the role they'd assigned. As I looked around at the genuine smiles and easy affection surrounding me, I knew with certainty that while blood might determine your relatives, love and respect determine your real family. Sometimes the healthiest roots are the ones we plant ourselves. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below and share your experience. Your story might help someone else feeling alone in their journey. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges, and share with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for listening, and remember, you deserve respect, not just because of what you do, but because of who you are. Until next time, take care of your heart and your boundaries.